My name is Wendy Dixon. I'm 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, my parents stood up during their 40th wedding anniversary dinner and made an announcement in front of 30 guests. We're taking the whole family to Hawaii next week for another celebration. Everyone applauded. My sister squealed with excitement. I smiled too, already picturing palm trees, warm ocean air, and my first real vacation in years. Then I asked a simple question. What time is our flight? The room went quiet. My father stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. My mother's smile stiffened, and in front of everyone, friends, relatives, witnesses, my father said, "You don't need to know, Wendy. You're not part of this trip. Someone has to stay behind and take care of the kids." 30 pairs of eyes. 30 people watching the moment my family made it clear that I wasn't really family at all. What they didn't know was that I had a secret, one I'd been building quietly for 3 years, and that night I decided it was finally time to use it. But before I tell you what happened next, take a moment to like and subscribe, only if this story resonates with you, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, to understand why I eventually walked away from everything I knew, I need to take you back to the beginning. The Dixon family lives in a white colonial house in a quiet Boston suburb. 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, a lawn trimmed to HOA perfection, the kind of house that silently announces, "We made it." My father, Harold Dixon, retired 3 years ago after working as a branch manager at a regional bank. My mother, Patricia, has never held a paid job, though she insists she's busier than any CEO, chairing the church women's committee, organizing neighborhood fundraisers, and carefully maintaining what she calls our family's reputation. Then there's my sister, Megan. She's 3 years younger than me and married to Derek Hartley, a corporate attorney whose firm she mentions in nearly every conversation. They have 2 children, Oliver, 5, and Sophie, 3, and a brand new Lexus SUV that always gets the best spot in my parents' driveway. My car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic, gets parked on the street. "Wendy, move your car," my mother would say whenever I visited. Derek's bringing the Lexus, and guests notice what's in the driveway first. I never argued. I just moved it. That's what happens when you're the invisible one in the family. You stop noticing all the small ways they've already decided you don't matter. The better parking space, the nicer seat at the table, the way my mother introduces my sister by her husband's job title, while I'm simply Wendy. She helps out. I work part-time as an accountant, mostly remote clients, flexible hours, modest income, nothing impressive by Dixon standards. What I never told them was about the other thing I do, the thing I started 3 years ago, after my life fell apart in a different way. I never told them that I learned how to see. Let me show you what helping out looks like in the Dixon family. Thanksgiving. I arrive at 6 a.m. to start the turkey. I set the table with my mother's Wedgwood china, the set I'm not allowed to use, only to wash. I arrange the flowers, polish the silver, and coordinate the timing of 7 side dishes. Megan arrives at noon in a cashmere sweater, kisses everyone hello, and sits down to be served. Christmas is the same routine, plus wrapping all the presents my mother bought because her arthritis is acting up. And that's where this story truly begins. It's funny how my mother's arthritis never stops her from playing bridge 3 times a week. Birthday parties for my niece and nephew are no different. I'm the entertainment coordinator, the cleanup crew, and the backup babysitter, all rolled into one. Last year, I spent 8 hours running Oliver's dinosaur-themed party while Megan went to get a manicure because she needed a break. The one time I asked, just once, if I could skip a family event because I had a client deadline, my mother's voice turned cold. "Family comes first, Wendy. We all make sacrifices." Except I'm the only one who ever seems to make them. The breaking point never comes in a single explosion. It comes in small moments, quiet ones. Like the Christmas when my gift was a kitchen apron that said "World's Best Aunt" in glittery letters. Megan handed it to me, smiling like she'd done something thoughtful. I wore it every single time I came over to cook, clean, and babysit. Do you know when the truth finally hit me? One random Tuesday evening, standing at the sink, scrubbing my mother's Le Creuset pot after yet another family dinner, I realized I couldn't remember the last time anyone had invited me anywhere without expecting me to work. 3 years ago, my life fell apart in a different way. I'd been dating a man named Kevin for 4 years. We talked about marriage, about kids, about the future. Then one evening, he sat me down and said words I'll never forget. "I love you, Wendy, but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. You're just there. You've always just been there. Always just there. Like furniture, like wallpaper." After he left, I wandered into a pawn shop downtown. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for something, anything to fill the hole he left behind. That's when I saw it. A used Canon DSLR camera, well-maintained, priced at $180. I bought it, with money I should have saved. I told no one. That camera became my secret. I started photographing the people most others ignore. Elderly women waiting at bus stops, the tired faces of overnight janitors, the calloused hands of street vendors. People society looks right through, the same way my family looks right through me. I called the series Invisible Women. I created an anonymous Instagram account. No face, no real name, just the photos. Over 3 years, it grew to 12,000 followers. People who saw what I saw. People who understood. I kept the camera wrapped in an old cashmere scarf at the back of my closet. It was the only thing I ever kept just for myself. 3 weeks before my parents' anniversary party, I received an email I almost deleted as spam. It was from Coastal Light Gallery in Monterey, California, asking if I'd be interested in discussing my work. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes before realizing my hands were shaking. But I didn't reply. Not yet, because good things didn't happen to people like me. There's only one person in my family who truly sees me. Her name is Ruth, my mother's younger sister. Aunt Ruth is what my mother calls the family disappointment. She never married, she followed her passion for ceramics instead of getting a real job, and somehow she's the only one who ever understood exactly who I am. 20 years ago, Aunt Ruth moved to Carmel by the Sea and opened a small cafe with a pottery studio in the back. My mother has never forgiven her for it. Ruth threw away her potential, my mother likes to say. She could have had a good life, but instead she chose to play with clay. What she doesn't know is that I've been calling Aunt Ruth every Sunday night for the past 7 years. Ruth was the first person who ever truly saw my photographs. I sent her just one, just a single image, testing the waters. Her reply made me cry. "Wendy, this is extraordinary. You have a gift." No one had ever called anything I'd done extraordinary. She was the one who encouraged me to keep shooting, to keep posting, to keep believing. And 3 weeks before my parents' anniversary party, she said something that changed everything. "Wendy, I hope you don't mind, but I sent your Instagram link to someone, a gallery owner I know in Monterey. His name is Marcus Coleman. He's looking for emerging artists." I nearly dropped the phone. "Aunt Ruth, that's the gallery that emailed me." "I know, sweetheart," she said softly. "He told me he wants to talk to you about a solo exhibition." I went silent, my heart pounding. That's real," I finally whispered. "That's an actual career." "Yes, it is," she replied, gentle but unwavering. "And you deserve it. You don't need anyone's permission to pursue what you love. I learned that lesson late. You don't have to." That night, I replied to Marcus Coleman's email. And now, let me take you to the evening that changed everything. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. A milestone worthy of a party, according to my mother, which meant 30 guests, a catered menu I would assist with to save money, and an evening dedicated to celebrating the Dixon family's 4 decades of picture-perfect marriage. Preparations began a week in advance. I took 3 days off from my accounting clients to help. I ordered flowers, white roses and peonies, exactly as my mother specified. I hand-wrote 60 place cards in the calligraphy she insisted on. I coordinated with the caterer, pressed tablecloths, and polished the Waterford crystal glasses that had been a wedding gift 40 years earlier. On the day of the party, I arrived at 7 a.m. I wore jeans and a t-shirt. There was no point dressing up when I'd be in the kitchen for the next 10 hours. By 6 o'clock, the house looked flawless. Candles glowed on every surface. The dining table stretched across the living room, set for 30 with my mother's finest china. I changed into a simple black dress. Nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention. "Wendy," my mother stopped me in the hallway, looking me up and down with a frown. "Is that what you're wearing?" "It's black," I said. I thought it was appropriate. "It's fine, I suppose," she replied. "Just stay in the background. Today is about your father and me." I nodded. I always nodded. Guests began arriving at 7. Men in sports coats, women in cocktail dresses, old colleagues, church friends, neighbors with lawns as manicured as ours. 30 people who thought they knew the Dixon family. None of them knew me. And in 3 hours, that wouldn't matter anymore. Megan arrived at 7:15, perfectly timed for maximum impact. She swept through the door in a red wrap dress. "Diane von Furstenberg," she announced proudly to anyone who asked. Derek followed in a charcoal suit, their 2 children dressed like they'd stepped out of a catalog. My mother rushed forward, praising Megan's beauty, Derek's success, and the children's perfection. I stood back, watching, waiting. I watched from the kitchen doorway, a tray of bruschetta balanced in my hands. "Everyone, you remember my daughter Megan and her husband Derek," my mother announced brightly to the room. "Derek's a partner at Whitmore and Associates. They just made him partner last year. We're so proud." Applause followed, smiles, congratulations. What my mother didn't mention was that I'd been doing Derek's taxes for the past 3 years, free of charge, of course. I moved through the room with appetizers, refilling wine glasses, answering questions from guests who didn't recognize me. "Are you with the catering company?" one woman asked, reaching for a crab cake. Before I could answer, my mother appeared at her elbow. "Oh, that's Wendy," she said lightly, "my other daughter. She's helping out tonight." The woman smiled politely and turned away. My mother didn't notice. She never did. Later, Derek approached me, Sophie squirming in his arms and Oliver tugging at his jacket. "Hey, can you take them?" he said. "Megan and I need to mingle." Not, "Would you mind?" Not, "Thank you," just, "Can you take them?" Like passing off luggage. I took them. I fed them dinner in the kitchen, wiped Sophie's face when she spilled juice on her dress, told Oliver 3 stories to keep him from running into the living room and disrupting the party. When I finally came back out, dessert was being served. I hadn't eaten all day. No one had thought to save me a plate. At 9 o'clock, right after my mother's tiramisu was passed around, my father stood and tapped his champagne glass with a fork. The room fell silent. 30 faces turned toward him, smiling expectantly. "Patricia and I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice warm with practiced charm. 40 years of marriage, 4 decades of building this family, this life, this home. My mother beamed beside him. Megan reached for Derek's hand. I stood near the kitchen doorway, still holding a dirty dessert plate. "And to celebrate this milestone," my father continued, pausing for effect, "we have a surprise announcement." My mother's eyes sparkled. "Next week, we're taking the whole family to Hawaii, 1 week at the 4 Seasons in Maui, a second celebration, just the Dixons." The room erupted. "How wonderful! What a gift! You 2 deserve it." Megan squealed. "Dad, that's amazing! The kids are going to love it." Something lifted in my chest. The whole family. That meant me. For once, I wouldn't be cooking, cleaning, or babysitting. I'd actually be included. I stepped forward, allowing myself a small smile. "That sounds incredible," I said. "What time is our flight?" The question hung in the air. My father's expression changed. He glanced at my mother. Something passed between them. A look I'd seen 1,000 times but never truly understood until that moment. "Wendy," he said slowly, "you don't need to know the flight time." The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of anticipation, but the sharp, brittle quiet of something going very wrong. "I don't understand," I heard myself say. My father cleared his throat. "Because you're not going." 30 pairs of eyes. That's how many people watched my father calmly inform me that I wasn't included in the family vacation. "Someone needs to stay behind," my mother added, as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world. "Megan and Derek need a real vacation. That means you'll watch the children." "But I started. "Honestly, Wendy," my mother cut in sharply, "you don't have anything important to do. Megan works hard. She deserves a break." Megan works hard. Megan, who hadn't held a job since Oliver was born. Megan, who had a nanny 3 days a week and still complained about being exhausted. "It's just a week," Derek added, not even looking at me. "The kids love you." I stood there in my plain black dress, holding a dirty plate while 30 people watched me be dismissed from my own family. A few looked uncomfortable, most looked away. One woman, I didn't know her name, leaned toward her husband and whispered something. He nodded. I caught the words. Poor thing, she must be used to it by now. The champagne glass in my hand trembled. I set down the plate, set down the glass. I didn't trust myself not to drop them. "Of course," I said quietly. "I understand." I smiled, the smile I'd perfected over 32 years of being the helper, the one who never complained, the one who was always, always just there. But something inside me finally cracked, not shattered, cracked, like a fault line shifting before an earthquake. I excused myself and went into the kitchen, leaned against the counter, closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I started making a different kind of plan. The party continued without me. Of course it did. I stood at the sink washing dishes on autopilot while laughter drifted in from the living room. At some point, Megan appeared, her red dress brushing the doorway. "Wendy, don't be upset," she said, reaching for my arm. "You know how it is. Derek and I really need this time together. It's been so stressful lately with the kids." I kept washing. "I understand," she continued brightly. "And you're so good with Oliver and Sophie. They'll barely notice we're gone." I rinsed a champagne flute, set it in the drying rack, and said nothing. Megan sighed, the sigh she always used when she thought I was being difficult. "Look, it's just a week, and it's not like you have a boyfriend or anything tying you down. Your schedule is flexible." Flexible, that word again, as if my time had no value simply because I chose how to spend it. "Derek made a list," she added, pulling out her phone. "Schedules, food allergies. Sophie can't have strawberries, remember? And there's this new thing with Oliver's ear, he might need drops. I'll text you everything." She didn't ask if I was willing, she just assumed. Derek appeared behind her, loosening his tie. "All sorted, great. We're heading out early tomorrow to pack. Megan, your mom wants photos before we leave." And just like that, they were gone. Not that I would have stopped them, not that I ever did. I stood alone in my mother's kitchen, staring at the long list of instructions Megan had just texted me, and in that moment, one clear thought crystallized in my mind. They don't see me as family, they see me as staff, and staff can resign. It was almost midnight when I found the emails. The last guests had finally gone. My parents were upstairs, exhausted from accepting 40 years' worth of congratulations. I was alone in the living room, folding tablecloths, when I remembered I needed to send a file to a client whose deadline I'd pushed back for this party. My laptop was at home. My mother's sat on the kitchen counter. She won't mind, I told myself. She'd borrowed my things 1,000 times without asking. I opened the laptop. Safari was already open, and there it was, my mother's Gmail, still logged in. I should have closed it immediately. I should have minded my own business, but then I saw my name in the subject line of a recent email thread. Hawaii arrangements, Wendy situation. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I knew I shouldn't click. I knew whatever I found would hurt. I clicked anyway. The emails were between my mother and Megan, starting a week before the party. From Patricia Dixon. Keep Wendy here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. Derek was right. It's like having free help. She should be grateful we give her something to do. Megan replied, "Totally agree, Mom. She'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad, honestly, but at least it works out for us." I read the words 3 times to be sure I understood them. Free help. She should be grateful. Kind of sad. I took screenshots, sent them to myself, deleted the email from the sent folder, cleared the browser history. Then I sat in my mother's dark kitchen, the house where I'd grown up, and finally allowed myself to understand exactly what I was to them. I drove home at 1 in the morning through empty streets. My apartment was small, a 1-bedroom in a building that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Beige carpet, white walls, secondhand furniture. My mother once called it depressing, but it was mine, the only place I could breathe. I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at my phone. Marcus Coleman's email glowed on the screen, the one I'd replied to but never followed up on. We'd exchanged a few messages about a possible meeting. He wanted to see my full portfolio in person. He was excited about the series. I could go. I could actually go. I called the only person who would understand. Aunt Ruth answered on the second ring, even though it was past midnight. "Wendy," she said immediately, "what's wrong?" I told her everything, the announcement, the humiliation, the emails. My voice broke exactly once when I read the words "free help" out loud. When I finished, there was silence. Then Aunt Ruth said something I will never forget. "Wendy, I have a spare room above the cafe. I need help with the morning shift anyway. And that gallery? It's 20 minutes from my place." "Aunt Ruth, I can't just—" "Yes, you can," she interrupted gently. "You can leave. You can choose yourself, for once. The only person stopping you is you." I hung up at 2 in the morning. By 6, I had started packing. 3 suitcases, my camera equipment, my laptop, the cashmere scarf that had wrapped my Canon for 3 years. I left behind the world's best aunt apron. For the first time in 32 years, I was choosing myself. If you've made it this far, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between your family and yourself? Have you ever stood at a crossroads where staying meant losing who you were? Tell me in the comments, what would you do? Would you stay and endure it? Or would you leave? And if this story matters to you, please hit the like button. Now let me tell you what happened when I told them I was leaving. 2 days before my family's Hawaii trip, I drove to my parents' house one last time. My mother was in the living room, coordinating vacation outfits. Megan sat on the couch, scrolling through resort reviews. Derek was upstairs, probably on a work call. My father sat in his armchair, reading the newspaper the way he always did, present in body, absent in attention. "I need to tell you something," I said from the doorway. My mother didn't look up. "If it's about the children's schedule, Megan already sent it to you." "It's not about that," I steadied my voice. "I'm not watching the kids. I won't be available." That got their attention. Megan's head snapped up. My mother's hands froze over a pile of sundresses. "What do you mean not available?" my mother asked. "I have a work opportunity in California," I said. "I'm leaving tomorrow." "California?" My father lowered his newspaper. "What kind of work opportunity?" "It's professional, something I've been working toward. I didn't owe them details. I didn't owe them anything." Megan's face twisted. Wendy, you can't be serious. I'm counting on you. We all planned around this. You planned around me without asking me, I said quietly. I'm not canceling my life because you assumed I didn't have one. The silence was deafening. Then my mother stood, her voice cold as January. This is incredibly selfish, Wendy. Megan needs your help. Family comes first. Family comes first, I repeated, except when it comes to inviting me to Hawaii. Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, Patricia Dixon had nothing to say. My father cleared his throat. If you leave, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. I understand, I said, and for the first time, I truly did. The next 24 hours were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. My mother called 6 times, each voicemail more dramatic than the last. You're tearing this family apart, Wendy. Your father is devastated. He barely ate dinner. Megan cried all evening. The children keep asking where Aunt Wendy is going. Megan took a different approach, weaponized vulnerability. I don't understand why you're doing this to me, she texted. I'm your sister. Don't you care about us at all? Then came the message that almost broke me. You're gonna end up alone, you know, just like Aunt Ruth. Is that what you want? I stared at the screen for a long time. Just like Aunt Ruth. They meant it as an insult. They meant it to scare me. But Aunt Ruth had her own business, her own art, her own life, built entirely on her own terms. And suddenly, that didn't sound like a warning at all. It sounded like freedom. Aunt Ruth was happy. Maybe ending up like Aunt Ruth wasn't a threat. Maybe it was a promise. I turned off my phone. The last thing I did before leaving Boston was walk through my empty apartment. 3 suitcases stood by the door. Everything else stayed behind. The secondhand couch, the beige carpet, the life I'd been living for everyone else. I taped my spare key to an envelope and slid it under my landlord's door. Month-to-month lease, paid through the end of January. A clean break. I loaded my car as the sun came up. My Honda Civic, 10 years old and as reliable as ever. The same car my mother had been embarrassed by for years. It was going to carry me toward a new life. I didn't look back as I pulled away from the curb. The drive from Boston to Carmel by the Sea takes about 45 hours if you push it. I didn't push. I took 5 days. Roadside motels, diners where nobody knew my name. Somewhere in Nebraska, I pulled into a rest stop and watched the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and pink. I photographed it, my first shot as a free woman. On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. I turned it on to check directions. A text from Megan. Mom says if you're not home when we get back from Hawaii, you're dead to her. I read it once, then I deleted it. She'd already been treating me like I was dead. At least now, I was alive somewhere else. On the 4th day, I called Aunt Ruth from a gas station in Arizona. I'm about 8 hours out, I said. Your room is ready, she replied. Fresh sheets, an ocean view, and Marcus wants to meet you tomorrow afternoon if you're up for it. My stomach flipped. Tomorrow? That's so fast. Wendy, she said, her voice warm and certain. You've been waiting 3 years for this. It's not fast. It's finally. When I crossed into California, something inside me shifted.
The Pacific appeared on my left, vast, endless, impossibly blue. I rolled down my window and breathed in salt air for the first time in my life. I cried, not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming sensation of possibility. At 7 o'clock on the 5th day, I pulled into the driveway of the Ceramic Cup Cafe and Pottery Studio in Carmel by the Sea. Aunt Ruth stood on the porch, arms open. Welcome home, she said, and for the first time in 32 years, somewhere actually felt like it. Carmel by the Sea didn't feel real at first. Storybook cottages with crooked rooftops, art galleries on every corner, ocean mist drifting through cypress trees. The whole town felt like a painting someone had dreamed into existence. Aunt Ruth's cafe sat on a quiet street 2 blocks from the beach. Hand-lettered sign, blue shutters, window boxes overflowing with lavender. The pottery studio filled the back half of the building, where she taught classes and sold her work to tourists who wandered in for coffee. My room was upstairs, small but bright. A bed with a white quilt, a desk by the window, a view of the Pacific that made my chest ache with something I couldn't quite name. "You'll work the morning shift," Aunt Ruth said over dinner that night, 6 to noon. "After that, your time is yours." "I don't know how to thank you," I said. She waved it off. "Don't thank me," she replied. "Just build something." And for the first time in my life, I finally could. That's payment enough. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I tied on an apron, not the world's best aunt one I'd left behind, just a simple canvas apron with the ceramic cup embroidered in blue thread, and learned how to make pour-over coffee. Customers came and went, locals who greeted Ruth by name, tourists drawn in by the smell of homemade scones. I took orders, wiped tables, and chatted with strangers who had no idea I'd run away from my entire life just 5 days earlier. By noon, I'd made $37 in tips. I'd smiled more than I had in months, and at 2 o'clock, I had an appointment at Coastal Light Gallery. I showered, changed into the nicest dress I owned, and walked 3 blocks to meet the man who might change everything. Marcus Coleman was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd pictured someone intimidating, slicked back hair, a designer suit, the kind of gallery owner who made artists feel small. Instead, the man who greeted me was tall and weathered, with silver hair and kind eyes. He wore a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and smiled like we were already friends. "Wendy Dixon," he said, shaking my hand. "Ruth has told me a lot about you, but the work speaks for itself." He led me through the gallery, white walls, natural light, photographs and paintings displayed with deliberate care. This was a serious place, a place where art mattered. "I've spent a lot of time with your Instagram," Marcus continued. "The Invisible Women series is extraordinary. There's a truth in those images that most photographers spend decades trying to capture." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken about my work like that. He stopped in front of a large monitor displaying my portfolio. On the screen was a photograph I'd taken 2 years earlier, an elderly woman waiting alone at a bus stop, her face a map of lines and quiet dignity. "This one," he said softly, "this is what made me reach out. There's something in her eyes. Patience, maybe, or resignation. It's heartbreaking." "She was waiting for a bus that came late," I said quietly. "She stood there for 40 minutes. No one stopped to help." Marcus nodded slowly. "You see people, Wendy. You really see them. That's a gift." Then he turned to face me, and his next words landed like a key turning in a lock. "I'd like to offer you a solo exhibition. 15 pieces, opening in 6 weeks. The gallery would cover printing, framing, and marketing. I would receive 60% of all sales." I signed the contract that Tuesday afternoon, sitting at Marcus's desk with sunlight pouring through the gallery windows. The document was simple: 15 photographs, an opening night scheduled for late August. Coastal Light Gallery would handle production costs, installation, and promotion. I would receive 60% of all sales revenue, with the gallery retaining 40% as commission. "Standard terms," Marcus said. "Fair terms." As I read through the pages, my hands began to shake. "Take your time," he said gently. "This is a big step." It wasn't the business terms that overwhelmed me. It was seeing my name printed in official type. Artist, Wendy Dixon. A legal document recognizing that my work had value. That I had value. I thought about all the times I'd done my family's taxes without credit, all the parties I'd organized without thanks, all the hours I'd spent caring for children who would grow up never knowing how much of my life I had quietly given to them. Not once had my name appeared on anything that acknowledged my contribution, until now. "The exhibition title," Marcus said, pointing to a line near the bottom of the contract. "I'd like your approval."
"We're proposing Invisible Women, Portraits of the Overlooked." Invisible Women, I whispered. It was perfect. I signed my name on the line. Marcus countersigned as witness. His assistant, Julia, a young woman with steady hands and professional calm, stamped each page with official precision. When it was done, Marcus handed me my copy. "Congratulations, Wendy, you're officially a represented artist." I walked out of the gallery holding the contract against my chest, physical proof that I wasn't nothing, that I had never been nothing. For 3 years, I'd built something in the shadows. Now it was finally stepping into the light. While I was building my new life in California, my family was discovering what my absence actually meant. I didn't witness the fallout firsthand. I learned about it later, pieced together through voicemails, scattered texts, and one deeply uncomfortable phone call from my father. Apparently, Hawaii was a disaster. Without me there to watch the kids, Megan and Derek didn't manage a single adults-only dinner. Oliver threw a screaming tantrum on the beach because no one had remembered to pack his special sandcastle bucket, the one I always remembered. Sophie developed an ear infection on day 3, and no one could find the pediatrician's number because I'd always been the one to keep track of medical details. My mother spent most of the trip complaining that the resort staff wasn't attentive enough. She called the concierge 3 times about turn-down service and sent back her Mai Tai twice. "This isn't relaxing at all," she reportedly said. "Who planned this trip?" My father, wisely, did not remind her that she had planned it herself. The texts began arriving on day 4. "Wendy, where are the kids' medication records?" "Wendy, what's Oliver's bedtime routine? He won't sleep." "Wendy, the restaurant doesn't have a kids' menu. What should they eat?" I didn't respond. I was too busy printing proofs at a photography lab in Monterey, choosing frames, and meeting with a journalist from Carmel magazine who wanted to interview me. But absence has a way of teaching people what they've been taking for granted. On day 6 of their Hawaiian vacation, Megan did something she'd never done before. She searched my name on Google, and for the first time, she found something other than a blank page. 6 weeks later, I stood in the center of Coastal Light Gallery and struggled to believe it was real. 15 of my photographs lined the walls, printed large, framed in simple black. The gallery glowed under soft, intentional light. A string quartet played quietly in the corner, Marcus's idea, not mine. A bartender in a crisp white shirt poured champagne. 50 guests moved through the space. Local artists I'd met through Aunt Ruth, collectors Marcus had invited, and a journalist from Carmel magazine already scribbling notes. For the first time in my life, people weren't asking what I could do for them. They were asking about my work. People had come specifically to see my work, my photographs hanging on gallery walls, price tags making my head spin. I wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated, nothing demanding attention. My hair was down for once, and I'd even dared to put on lipstick, a rare indulgence. Aunt Ruth appeared at my side, pressing a glass of champagne into my hand. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "What if nobody buys anything?" "Someone already has." She nodded toward a woman in pearls, examining the centerpiece of my exhibition, the bus stop photograph that had first caught Marcus's attention. A small red dot gleamed on the placard beside it. "That's Mrs. Petton," Aunt Ruth whispered. "She owns half the art in Monterey County. She just bought it for $3,000. $3,000 for something I had created." Then Marcus approached, grinning. "I want to introduce you to someone from the magazine. They're considering you for next month's cover feature." Cover feature, magazine cover, my face, my name, my story, all in print. I was halfway through the introduction when the gallery door opened and my world tilted. Megan and Derek walked in, still sunburned from Hawaii, looking completely out of place. Megan wore a floral sundress, better suited for a beach brunch than an art opening. Derek's phone was already out, his frown fixed on something I couldn't see. Both scanned the room with the same baffled expressions my family always wore when faced with something beyond their understanding. Then Megan saw me. "Wendy!" she exclaimed, rushing forward, arms outstretched as if we'd been apart for years. 50 guests turned to watch. The string quartet faltered for a fraction of a beat. I forced my voice to remain calm. "This is unexpected." "We had to come," she said, eyes wide and earnest. "We flew in yesterday. Mom found your Instagram. She's been calling everyone, trying to track you down." Derek appeared behind her, nodding at me in a manner that suggested we were business associates. "This is a gallery," I said. "My gallery opening, actually." Megan blinked, finally taking in the photographs, the guests, the champagne, the price tags. "You did all this?" Her voice carried genuine confusion. "Since 3 years ago," I said. "You never asked what I did in my free time." Aunt Ruth materialized at my elbow, a quiet wall of support. Marcus watched closely from across the room, ready to step in if needed. Megan leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Wendy, I have news. I'm pregnant again, number 3. I really need you to come home. Derek's work is crazy, and Mom isn't helping with the kids." There it was. No apology, no congratulations, just need. Always their need. The words hung in the air, heavy and familiar.